connect. So both the presentation and the recording will be shared with all the travel claims processor from all the missions. And as we were saying, this session is part of the ramp-up activities we are doing for the travel deployment, the Cluster 5 travel deployment. And this session is dedicated to the travel claims processor, to the TB11 role. Okay, Gary says that he cannot hear me. What about the others? You can also use the chat, or we are not that many people. We are only 5 so far, or 6. So you can also unmute your mic and stop me at any moment. So Karsten, I think you can hear me. So it should be an issue from Gary's end. Okay, so let me write something in the chat. Okay. So thank you, Karsten, for confirming. Thank you, Evelyn. All right, so let's move ahead. As we were saying, this session, we are going to be discussing on the TB11 role and mainly on the changes that are coming as part of this project, as part of this Cluster 5 deployment. Okay, we will discuss that there are not so many changes for you as a traveling claim processor, but we want you to be aware of which are the different travelers that have been introduced. Okay, and so that you are aware that you will receive different requests, okay, from different, related to different travelers. Okay, so what are we changing here with this deployment? So we have introduced, as part of this deployment, different type of travelers that we used to manage in FSS, and now we are going to be managing them in Umoja. Which are these type of travelers? So we have national staff and IUPs. These are the only new travelers that have been granted access to the employee self-service, meaning they have been granted with a profile, with a Unite ID account, and they are able to raise their own travel requests using Umoja. National staff, they were already able to connect into the portal because they were already using the portal for leave management and for other HR entitlements, but IUPs are a new non-staff categories that can use the portal to raise their own travel request. And we will discuss later on what kind of travel request they can raise by themselves in the portal. Besides these two, we also have other type of travelers, like uniform personnel, UMVs, consultants, individual contractors, and all other non-staff, like meeting participants, fellow judges. So we are, from now on, we are managing all their travel requests in Umoja. We used to do that in FSS, but from 15 June, we are able to manage their travel request also in Umoja. However, for these traveler categories appearing here in red, all their travel requests will be done on their behalf by the travel administrators. So these type of travelers appearing in red, they don't have access to the portal, they don't have access to the employee self-service, and all their travel requests will be processed on their behalf by the travel administrators. Okay. Any questions so far? You please feel free to unmute your microphone and speak, or you can also make use of the chat. All right. So let's move ahead and let's talk a little bit more in detail about the individual uniform personnel. So before we move on that, we want to talk a little bit about, because you can see here that IUPs have access to the portal. So they are appearing here in green. And then we have the uniform personnel that they cannot access the portal. So basically, the difference between IUPs and uniform personnel, you can understand it by the type of uniform personnel. So normally, IUPs are basically the ones that are deployed in the mission using a commercial flight, like police officers, staff officers. So there are three different employees or groups within the military category that are considered IUP. So these ones are going to be the ones that will have access to the portal. And all the others, like contingents and troops that normally are deployed in the mission using a charter flight, they don't have access to the portal, and everything will be done on their behalf by the travel administrator. Okay? All right. So let's talk a little bit more in detail about how the management of uniform personnel is done in the system. Okay, and there is specifically one new travel category that is dedicated for uniform personnel for the deployment and for the repatriation of these travelers. So as we were saying, we have for uniform personnel, we have a new, this is the only new travel category that we have in the system for the deployment and repatriation of uniform personnel. So you, as a travel claim processor, you were used to 3 different travel categories. Remember, official travel, HR travel, and entitlement travel. And with this implementation, we are introducing a new travel category that is used for the deployment and for the repatriation of UPs. This type of, or this travel category is always raised on behalf by the travel administrator. There is one specific travel administrator role managing uniform personnel. And these travel administrators will raise both the deployment travel request and the related expense reports. So you will be receiving the expense reports related to deployment or repatriation travel, and you will receive them always prepared by the travel administrator's UPs. In here, we have for the deployment and repatriation travel is where we are introducing in the system the concept of group travel, meaning that the travel request process for the deployment and the repatriation of UPs can be managed as a group. So the travel administrator UP will be able to raise a unique travel request to deploy or to repatriate one or more UPs. So with a unique deployment travel request, the travel administrator will be able to deploy 1, 10, or even more UPs. So this is where we have the concept of group travel functionality, and we will see that for you as a travel claim processor, it will not have a big impact, because at your stage, the expense reports will always be individual. So it's only the travel request part that is managed as a group. So we'll talk about that a little bit more in detail in the next slides. The shipment requests that relate to deployment and repatriation are managed individually for each UP, and the same thing for the expense reports that are managed individually, meaning that the travel administrator role for uniform personnel will raise the expense report for each individual UP. So for you as a travel claim processor, there are no changes on that process, but it's good for you to know that the travel request part is managed as a group. Then, so this is the point number 1, is the one that is a different travel category that has been introduced as part of this project. Then, official travel, the process is the same as you are used to have right now. Okay, so the process for the travel request and for the expense report is the same. The only kind of difference is that IUPs are able to raise official travel request by themselves, but only when the travel request or only when the trip is for within mission area and using non-commercial mode of transportation. So this is the only scenario for which IUPs can raise their own travel request using the portal. So, and the same thing for the spend report. So you, as a travel claim processor, you might expect to receive spend reports coming directly from IUPs, but only for official travel within mission, non-commercial. Okay, so only official travel within mission is allowed for IUPs to raise travel requests and spend reports. Commercial ticket is not allowed for them by themselves. They will also submit the spend report. So this is why we are saying that as a travel claim processor, you will be receiving spend reports coming directly from IUPs. And they are also able to submit standalone spend reports. So they have the option to submit standalone spend reports for the exceptional cases when standalone spend reports are meant to be used. All right. And then all other official travels, meaning for any other official travel category, like outside mission area, training, so any other official travel type that is not within mission area, the travel request and the spend reports will be prepared by the travel administrator for uniform personnel. Okay, and even if it's within mission area, if a commercial ticket is required, it's again the travel administrator role that we have to raise the travel request and the expense report. All right, so you will receive in those other official travel types or whenever a commercial ticket is required, the expense report will come from the travel administrator instead of from the IUP themselves. Okay. All right. So point 2 and 3 for you, there are no changes. Let's talk a little bit more about the deployment and repatriation. Okay. So let's next slide is going to be going a little bit further on point 1 on the deployment and repatriation travel, to give you a little bit more background of the whole process, even though your role as a travel claim processor will not be that different. So for deployment and repatriation, what we said is that the travel request process is the one that will be managed as a group. Before we go on the travel request process, something you need to consider is that because right now we are going to be managing in Umoja all travel requests, both for national staff and for many non-staff categories. So one thing you need to consider, or one thing you need to know, is that even the traveler is not a staff member. So for any type of traveler, we always need an index number, here appearing in the slide as a GID, Global Index Number, and an HR mini-master record, meaning that for a UMB or for a consultant, for a meeting participant, a requirement for all of them is always to have an index number and an HR mini-master process. So the HR section in your mission are the ones that can get an index number for each type of traveler, and they will also process personal action for each of them to be able to travel them using Umoja. Okay, so this HR part is a requirement. You are already used to that for international staff, but it's also a requirement for any type of traveler. So once we have the index number and the HR mini-master record properly updated in the system, we can initiate the travel request process, and for the specific scenario of deployment and repatriation, the travel administrator can raise a group travel request. So this group travel request, the travel administrator can indicate the itinerary, right, for the whole group, and then the travel administrator will indicate the details of each of the UPs that are being deployed or repatriated. So travel administrator can raise a unique group travel request, including one or several UPs. The process is the same no matter if we have only one or we have several. So we always use the same solution to deploy UPs. Okay, and then travel administrator can include one or several. This group travel request will go to the certifying officers approval work centers, and they, as a certifying officers, as a TSA, they are able to review the details of the group, and they can certify at once, right? There is no need to certify each of the travelers. They can certify the entire group travel request. So certification of the deployment and repatriation is done as a group, and the same thing happens for the TPO approval. So the travel processing officers will receive in their work centers the group travel request. They will get the estimate to travel the entire group, and they will contact the vendors to arrange the tickets for the entire group. All right, so they will receive in their work centers this group travel request, and the key point here that affects you is that once the TPO approves this group travel request, the system will automatically generate one individual travel request with a unique or with an individual TR number for each of the uniformed personnel that have been included in this group travel request. Okay. So after the TPO, let me repeat that part, after the TPO approves this group travel request, all the subsequent processes, including the one that affects you most, the expense report part. So the expense report part will be done individually. So the travel administrator will raise the expense report linked to the individual travel request that were generated automatically by the system after the TPO approved the group travel request. Okay. So you, as a travel claim processor, we can say that you will always receive, so the expense report approval process is the same. So they go first to the certifying officer, and lastly, you will receive in your approval work center the individual expense report. So for you, there is no change, because in your work center, you will always receive expense reports for each individual, no matter if we are talking about UPs or any other traveler type, national staff, UMBs. So your expense report claims will be always related to individual travelers. Any question on the deployment and repatriation travel? This is one of the new things in this implementation, this deployment and repatriation travel. But as you can see, for you as a travel claim processor, you shouldn't be having any new thing, right? So the requests coming to your work center are going to be always claims for unique travelers. So only the travel request part is the part that is managed as a group. All right. Questions, comments? You're very quiet. I cannot see even any comment in the chat. Can you still hear me? All right. Okay. No comment so far. Thank you. Thank you, Carsten. Thank you, Reggie. All right. So this is the deployment and repatriation travel. Here we have the, for the group travel, you can see this is the email that is sent to the agency, to the vendor, including the details of the entire group. Okay, this is basically important for the TPO, not that much for you as a travel claim processor. So this is the email that is sent to the vendor to arrange the ticket for each individual. Okay, so here that's why we have the total cost for the entire group and the details of each of the traveler. So something that is a little bit different here is that you can see that each uniform personnel have their own index number. So here is what we were mentioning before. So all travelers should have an index number. And another thing that we can see from this email generated to the vendor is that at this stage, so after the TPO approved the group travel request, that is when this email is sent to the vendors, at this stage, the system has already generated individual TR numbers. So you can see that in the email sent to the vendor, the TR number, the individual TR numbers are already appearing. So we have TR number ending in 96 for the first traveler, ending in 43 for the second traveler, ending in 44 for the third traveler. So the system already generated individual travel requests for each traveler. And these individual travel request numbers will be the ones that will be used by the travel administrator when submitting the expense reports. So the expense report related for the first traveler will be linked to this travel request. Okay, and each travel request will have its related expense report, as you currently do for international staff. Okay. All right. So that was the part of deployment and repatriation. For national staff, or let's talk a little bit more about the official travel. So the official travel process is the same no matter if we are talking about national staff or we are talking about uniform personnel. So basically, the official travel process, the roles involved in the process remain the same. So we have the creation of a travel request, that in case of national staff, they are the ones raising the travel request. If we are talking about other non-staff, it will be always the travel administrator doing that on behalf. And then the approval process remains the same, certifying officer and the TPO, right? The TV10. We have changed a little bit the roles. So now we have introduced a new TPO, right? That this TV20 is new because of this deployment. So this TV20 role, they are dealing with non-commercial travel requests to facilitate this kind of very frequent non-commercial and within mission travel requests that are basically the ones that are more frequent for national staff, for IUPs, and for other non-staff like UMBs and consultants. So this TV20 is a new role that is managing non-commercial travel requests. And then the expense report process for official travel remains the same. So it's either the traveler or the travel administrator who will raise the expense report. If there are no additional expenses, the expense report will be automatically approved, what we normally name as express expense report. And if there are changes in the itinerary, if there are additional expenses that are claimed in the expense report, the approval process remains the same, certifying officer, and later on you as a travel claim processor that will review the claims submitted by the national staff or by the travel administrators. So the approval process for official travel, no changes on that regard. All right. Regarding the boarding passes and other attachments, okay. So remember, the basic rule for staff is that no boarding passes are required in the expense reports, and there have been official communication on that regard. But this general rule that no boarding pass is required in the expense report, it basically applies for staff, because the staff have to keep their original boarding passes for 5 years. That's why in Umoja we are not requiring, and you as a TCP you shouldn't be requiring the attachment of boarding passes as a general rule. But that only applies for national staff. For all the other travelers that that are non-staff, okay, that rule of 5 years does not apply, and the general message should be that travel administrators should be asking for a proof of travel for all non-staff. Okay, so they should be trying to contact the travelers to get the proof of travel. Okay, and that doesn't mean that all the different non-staff will come back to the travel administrators to demonstrate that they've traveled, but at least as an organization we should make sure that we try to contact the traveler to demonstrate that they have traveled. Okay, and then if they reply, we could be attaching the boarding passes for the non-staff categories, and if they don't reply, then as a travel administrator for non-staff, we could in that case close the expense report, indicating that we have tried to contact the non-staff, but no reply. There was no reply from the non-staff. Okay, so as a travel claim processor, you should be liaising with the travel administrator to ask them that for non-staff, proof of travel should be at least travel administrator should always try to contact the non-staff to get the proof of travel, right? And remember that there is free text in the travel request and in the expense report. So if they try to contact the non-staff and they didn't get any feedback from them, they can always indicate in the free text that they requested the non-staff for proof of travel, but no reply was received. Okay. All right. So basically, for official travel, there are no changes. So what you used to do in FSS, now the only change is that we are going to be using Umoja for the expense report part. Okay. Regarding the, I see some questions regarding the operating model for RSE and client missions. Okay, so Carsten, I take note of the question about who will be, where will be the travel claims processor located for within mission travel. So if you don't mind, I'll come back to you with that answer. All right. So I can send to you the operating model for RSE and their client missions, and where will those travel claim processor be located. Okay, so Carsten, I'll reply back to you by email on the operating model for the travel claim processor. All right. Okay. All right. So for official travel, no changes. And then for CICs and UMBs, they can also have official travel, okay? But basically, so official travel category applies to all non-staff categories, so they can always travel, or we have cases of within mission travel, official business, or any other travel type within the official travel category. And then the R&R that for this deployment basically applies to UMBs, and the HR travel, specifically the appointment travel, that basically applies for the consultants. Okay. All right. So these the processes for entitlement travel and HR travel, there are no changes. So official travel we already said. For non-staff UMBs, the process is the same. The only difference is that is raised by the travel administrator instead of by the non-staff. Okay, and then for R&R, for UMBs, we still have the three different options, right? The ones that you are already familiar with. So for R&R, even if we are talking about UMBs, we have three options available, right? Depending on the mission. So missions providing free UN transportation to the international staff or UMBs, we have the same process as we have currently for international staff. We have also the lump sum option. So here you have the link to the job aids explaining the process. So there are no changes in that regard. And we also have the ticket option. Okay, so in here you have the link also to the R&R travel with ticket option. So compared to what you currently have for international, no changes. Okay. All right. And then regarding HR travel, the process remains the same. So HR travel, appointment travel for consultants. So the expense report part, it's is the same as you currently have for international staff. Okay, so basically, there are not so many changes process-wise for either official travel, R&R travel, and HR travel. Basically, the only kind of new travel category is the one used for deployment and for repatriation travel. Okay. So, do you have any particular issues you want to raise? I see that Carsten has posted some comments in the chat. Okay. So whoever has a mic, just mute yourself and speak up. Okay. So no problem in that regard. So basically, we have already reviewed the changes, so the rest of the session would be dedicated for questions, comments, and any issue you might be facing currently in the missions. So the one for the operating model for the RSCE, Carsten, I'll be also attaching to this presentation the operating model and you'll be able to see where the travel claims processor for client missions will be located. Okay, then I can see. Okay, then Carsten, you are asking some questions about policy, right? So terminal expenses for within mission travel. Carsten, are you talking about within mission travel using UN flight? So basically, the entitlements remain the same, right? So if you used to pay what you used to pay in FSS, if the UPs or UMBs using a UN flight for within mission, if they were entitled for terminal expenses, right? The entitlements remain the same, so there are no changes on the entitlement side of it. So your question is about policy-wise, right? If they are entitled or not. Okay. All right. So any other comment, question from any of the attendees? So basically, that was the presentation I had prepared for the changes, but there are not that many. So right now it's open for comments, questions from your end. No questions, okay. All right, what about the others? I can see 8 other people connected. All right. So I'll be sending the presentation and also the operating model for the RSE missions for basically for the client missions of RSE. So if you have any specific question or comment, you can always get back to us by email. So I think it's going to be much easier if we do it that way. All right. So thank you very much for joining. It was a short session, but for you as a TCP, there are not changes in the process in the way you operate. So we don't expect many issues as part of this implementation. So thank you very much for joining, and we'll keep in touch.